Whoa! I'm so sorry, I didn't see you there. Oh, you're so freaking hot today. Okay, guys, we are going to talk about Bluelock today, and specifically, we're going to talk about everyone's new favorite character, Shidou. And I want to specifically talk about the fact that I've seen so many people hype up this character like crazy, and I wanted to talk about, is he worth the hype? Yes. Honestly, yes. He 100% is, but don't worry, today I'm going to try to prove to you that he's worth even more than the hype that he's already been given, okay? I'm going to prove to you that he's one of the best characters of this freaking series, okay? I'm also going to bring up some negative points so everyone can be happy, okay? And you know, he's not a perfect character. Nobody's perfect, except for you. You're not too far, but so let's get into it. I'm going to start with the positive. So first, the first thing you got to know is that we know nothing about him. We have absolutely no clue about his background. We don't know anything about his story. We don't know where he came from. We just sort of discovered him, and that's it. So that's kind of amazing, right? Because he has become such a freaking memorable character, even though we know nothing about him. We know zero about him, and he's still able to remain one of the coolest characters in the series. If you've ever seen Bleach or heard of Bleach or read Bleach, which I hope you did because it's an amazing series, you probably have seen Aizen, who's like one of the most iconic characters of the freaking of anime, honestly. And we knew nothing about him, but he still managed to be one of the most iconic characters of this entire series. Admittedly, potentially the best villain of this series. And we knew nothing about him. So it's not because you don't know anything about the backstory of a character that he isn't a good character, which is freaking awesome, because every single action that Shido accomplishes is based on his ideal, right? And what is his ideal? He always talks about the explosion of the heart. He wants to make his heart explode. And at a first glance, that can seem a bit abstract, right? But actually, it's really simple. Genuinely, almost simplistic. It's really simple. What it means is that basically Shidou, when he plays football, or maybe in life in general, he just seeks excitement. He seeks to feel good. He seeks to feel challenged. He seeks all these strong, passionate emotions. And that's genuinely all it means. His way to walk in life is feeling this explosion, this excitement, which we see honestly all throughout the series. When you see him, it's all he ever talks about. It's all he ever wants. So it's really genuinely not abstract at all. He just wants to be happy. A really unusual thing that he does, like genuinely, I don't think I've ever seen, well, maybe I have, but I don't think I've ever seen something similar, is that he describes it as something being part of his being. So rather than like, I play football and it makes me feel good, for him, it's more like a survival thing. I need to play football to feel good. It's part of me, and there is no one else on earth who likes football more than I do. He even says that. He's a very sexual character, and he often refers to his passion for football as like a reproductive thing. So there's this sort of comparison he makes with like scoring goals is kind of like planting the seed in reproduction, if that makes sense. You know, playing football for him is almost like making babies, basically. It's his way of reproducing, of creating life, if that makes sense. And what you need to know, what's super, again, incredible about him, is that he will never, and when I mean never, I'm going to show you examples, but he literally never deviates from his freaking ideal. So a few examples of that would be in, I think it was the second selection, where we didn't see the game, but he played a game where he was feeling bored, and he purposefully decided to get a red card with violence, like punching, you know, like punching a guy basically to get a red card and to feel excited because he was so bored by the game that he just did that to, feel good about himself. So that shows you how much he's willing to do to just satisfy that ideal, to satisfy that need. He also did that, after that game when Igarashi, who admittedly no one likes Igarashi, but still, it was pretty intense. Shidou, knowing full well that if he loses Igarashi, he's on his own, and he's eliminated for Bluelock because he's on his own, he decided to kick Igarashi to basically, he wanted to break his skull because Igarashi told him he wished he had never, played with him. He wished he had never been in his team. One thing that again ties into this idea of he never deviates from his ideal is that although what makes him feel the most excited is scoring his own goals, right? Scoring his goals is what makes him feel the best. But when he sees other players do really well, he's genuinely super happy as well. It really excites him when he sees other players do mega well. It's so you see that his ideal is actually not necessarily scoring goals. What he wants is to feel his heart explode, and what he does it through is football. So anything that excites him in football is amazing, which is again super cool because it's so unusual from the other characters that usually get really butthurt when they're not the ones scoring. They get really mad and pissed, like Isagi. Isagi gets really angry when he's not the one scoring. He gets into his mind, he gets really pissed. Whereas Shidou really enjoys it when other people score, especially if it's spectacular goals. It just goes to show that unlike a major part of the characters that just want to, be the best strikers on earth, right? That's what they want. They want to be the best striker. What he wants is just to feel good. Even though he's a very unusual character, he genuinely fits Bluelock so extremely well. And that's why he's so interesting, because he's so different from the other characters, but he still manages to fit the Bluelock philosophy extremely well. So that's what makes him so freaking memorable. And I remember at one point in the U20 game, he even mentions that he again, I know that we've talked about this, but again, you'll have noticed that he is a bit of a violent character. Okay, I hope you've noticed that. But he takes the head of another player, smacks it against the floor, not 20 times like I'm doing now because I'm an idiot. And all this player was talking about how yeah, I want to become the best striker in the world, and this dude is just this is so lame. Why do you even care about this title? And in my mind, that just made him even better because it just showed that he genuinely does not care for these titles, for the best striker, for the World Cup, all that stuff. He thinks it's super lame. He just wants to feel good. So I'm not saying that's necessarily good motivation, but I'm just saying that he really sticks out compared to all the other characters, which in my opinion makes him phenomenal. And now, guys, let me take a sip of water. Do you guys like my cup? It's a bunch of zebras. I like it. It's very cute. I'm gonna take some more. Imagine if I just did some ASMR now. Just some Bluelock ASMR. I play football and I like peanuts. Okay. Maybe in the future. Who knows? So one thing you got to know about this character is that every single one of his skills, because basically what you need to know is that what makes him feel the best is scoring goals, right? That's what makes him feel the best. That's what makes him feel the most alive. That's what makes him his heart explode the most. And because of that, all of his skills revolve around scoring goals, right? And that's why he developed something called extreme spatial awareness. So at any given moment, he's aware of all the opportunities he has to score a goal and is ready to take one. And even Karasu, in one of the previous chapters, he says his defense and game-making abilities are second-rate, but his body has all the parameters focused on his ability to score once in front of the goal. It just goes to show that every single thing that Shidou does is geared towards scoring a goal, which makes sense because it's what makes him feel the best. It's what aligns with his ideal the most. And that makes him such an incredible character because it just goes to show that narratively he's aligned with the skills he has as a football player, which is in the case of Bluelock, what makes a character interesting is when his skills align with the narrative, right? One thing that also is incredible, genuinely so freaking incredible, is that Ego Jinpachi mentions that the reason Shidou is not playing with the Bluelock team for the U20 game is because none of the players are able to handle him. And to me, that really struck a chord because it just goes to show that even though no one was able to handle him, he was still one of the best goal scorers in the series. And once someone like Sai in the U20 game was able to sort of uncover that potential, he was able to do phenomenally well. So to me, it just goes to show that potentially, this character has an incredible amount of potential. So I hope for the future that's a good sign, and I think it might. Unfortunately, something he does, but also something that fits with his character so freaking well, is that when he sees an opportunity to score a goal, even if someone else might score a goal that would be a better opportunity than his, he might interfere. So for example, I don't know if you remember, but Rin and Shidou collided and prevented each other from scoring a goal at some point. And that to me, it kind of sucks in terms of like him scoring goals. But in terms of narratively fitting, it's absolutely perfect. And the last thing is in terms of like his appearance, what I found so freaking cool is that a lot of people actually call him an insect. But in my opinion, he looks like a dragon. I think he genuinely looks like the thick eyeliner, the spiky hair, the wings when he scores goals, like the dark monster wings, genuinely reminded me of a dragon. And also, interesting fact is that in his last name, not last name, but given name, Shidou Ryusei, Ryu means dragon. So I think he's actually meant to represent a dragon, and he really does. You know, his strong physique, his big physique, he genuinely looks like a dragon to me. And finally, something that I noticed, and I think might be something that is going to appear later, and I really hope it does, is the sort of dichotomy between Kunigami and Shidou, and this sort of hero versus monster thing where Kunigami is like the superhero, where he's very selfless, and at least in the beginning of the series, right? He is like protecting other people from violence, and you know, this very strong character that wants to be a hero for other people, who wants to inspire other people. Whereas like Shidou is the absolute opposite, where he doesn't mind hurting other people for his personal objectives, right? And I think they're really, really going to play on that in the future. And I really hope they do, because it was genuinely such a cool part of that interaction that briefly happened between them. So I'm genuinely really looking forward to seeing a bit of that in the future, and I really hope it does. And I think it will. Prediction? It's going to happen. Trust me, it's going to happen. Okay, guys. I'm so sorry, but now we're going to talk about the negatives, and there is some negative stuff to talk about. So let's start. Okay. Oh, it's really going to hurt you people. Okay. So the first thing is that Even though his motivation and his ideal is fantastic, some might argue that it is very simple, which I won't fully disagree with. So if you were to compare him with another character, I don't know if you guys have seen Bleach again, but you might know of a character called Grimjo. And in terms of the vibe of the character, right, in terms of the personality, at first glance, they might seem very similar. You know, they're this very sort of brash, aggressive, easygoing characters that just want to challenge themselves and feel good and destroy other people. But when you dig a bit deeper, their motivations are very different. So Grimjo, if you're to think about it, if you're to take a bit of perspective, he lives in a society that he hates. Absolutely hates the society where he lives and absolutely despises people looking down on him, but actually happens to be sort of under the governance of someone who controls him and who gives him orders, and he has no choice but to suffer through that and be humiliated by that. So his motivation actually is really cool, is really is deeper. And for some people that might seem like not necessarily super important, but some might actually argue it is. For Shido, his motivation is simply that it's part of his being and he needs it for survival. So it's not a bad motivation, but it is simpler. And some people might like it, some people might not. I personally don't really mind it too much. But again, some people might argue that it is not mega interesting. There's a rule in writing, I'm going to come back to the cringe, but there's a rule in writing called show, don't tell. It's a very basic rule where basically what I mean by that is that if something important is happening, if you want to convey something, rather than talking about it and explaining what it is, you can show it. And that's going to elicit that's going to create much more emotion in the audience. And that's true because Shidou in the U20 game, when he scores his like super goal, that's a show moment where he doesn't talk about it and it just like out of reflex, out of instinct, it just happens. He sees the ball and he just scores the most amazing goal ever. But when he talks about this, when he talks about football being the canvas of life and playing football is kind of like making babies and all this reproduction stuff, it just feels a bit off. It just feels like a bit too much, and it can be a little cringe. And I think that's even more the case when you think about him as a teenager that plays football, thinking that he's sort of in a biological need of scoring goals. It can get a bit, when he talks about it, it can get just a bit weird, a bit cringy, in my opinion. Yeah, that's sort of my biggest negative point for him. But apart from that, I'm good. Ooh, get ready for some hot takes because I have a few hot takes for Shidou. I don't know if you're gonna like this. Ooh, okay. Let's start. So the first one is that during the second selection, we see him analyzing Ryo and Kunigami, right when he's playing against them. And he figures out their skill set purely by like touching them or like by seeing what they do. And this is such a shame because he never ever does that again. At least from what I remember, he never does that again, which is such a shame. He never talks about understanding other players, which is definitely a skill that he could have used in the future. Maybe that's part of his extreme spatial awareness and I just don't understand. But it just feels unfortunate that he never used it again in the future, or at least it seems like he never did. So yeah, that's a bit disappointing. Another thing that I feel is very unfortunate is that his skill set is actually quite similar to Nagi. And of course, a lot of you are going to say, no, that's BS. Like, Shidou is able to score on his own, Nagi is not. Yes, that's absolutely true. But ultimately, both of their skill sets revolves around scoring goals in the penalty area, being like kings of the penalty area. And the problem is that Nagi, unlike Shidou, is part of like the main original cast, or at least one of the original casts. And so I feel like, and especially in the Neo Egoist League, Nagi is doing extremely well, whereas Shido is not doing well at all, or at least not very well. So I'm a bit worried about his future. I hope we're gonna see more of him, and I really hope he's not gonna fade out, because at the moment, the fact is that both their skill sets are quite similar. So I am a bit worried, especially because of the next hot take, which is Ego Jinpachi mentions in the U20 game that he wasn't adaptable at all. And because of that, I'm worried that in the future, when the competition gets tougher, he's not going to be able to adapt and maybe will fade out. I'm a bit worried about that, and I hope it's wrong. I really hope it's wrong, because I really want him to stay. He's such a cool character, but those are like, that's actually quite a good point, to be honest. So I don't know. Okay, guys. In any case, Shidou is such a freaking cool character. I think that one thing I didn't mention it, but one thing that makes him so freaking memorable is that he's subscribed to this channel. So honestly, if you want to be as good at football as Shidou, like just instantaneously, I would like recommend doing that. I don't know if you have ever thought about this joke is so bad. I've heard this joke so many times, and it never gets good, but you know what? I'm gonna stop right now. Guys, I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you next time, okay?